Hey everybody, welcome back to the collective. I am currently in the process of doing mental burpees. In case anybody,
Yes, and you're only on number one. You've still got another 1,000 to go.
it'll take me all day to work through these burpees. Let me tell you. let me hold on. Let me just do one right now.
Life is a
Yeah, you're
struggle.
going to need a bigger
So-
There
mug.
we go. Well, welcome. First off, I just wanted to remind everybody that hasn't already done this, make sure that they do like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that way you get your little email saying, "Hey, we're online. You should come watch." So do that. For those that don't know, we got Yuri Bondar here, and we got Gray Man Dad, also known as Dre. Yuri is a martial arts instructor, as well as are you Army Reserve or Army regular?
I'm now serving in army.
Yeah,
I'm
in
now
the
in army.
Ukrainian army as well. And then Dre, you are a weapons, firearms. How do you describe it? Influencer? Not quite.
Enthusiast?
Enthusiast.
Enthusiast. Let's
There
put it
you
that
go.
way.
Yeah.
So basically, catering towards moms, dads, and your average farm enthusiast.
I like it. I like it. We're
Yeah.
going to talk about some good stuff today.
Well, I just want to say this. Looking at Yuri's image right now, it's about as clean as I've ever seen it. Hey, I mean, like did you clean the lens on your camera? Is there something going on over there that you're getting a better image right now?
I think it's a better internet in our city. Just
I just thinking
like
maybe you rubbed a little bit of pierogi sauce off of your camera lens or something like that. It's so clear right now.
I like it. I like it. I can make out the
I'm
details in his
fine.
shirt.
I'm fine.
There you
Yeah,
go.
totally details.
I like it. Any thoughts? Anybody got anything off the top of their head before we dive into a topic?
No.
No, good to go. Okay, well, Yuri, I'm gonna give you the spotlight here. This is your concept
Ooh,
for a conversation today. So, what are we talking about?
So we pick up this topic as the experience against or versus the known rules, known theories. Why I pick up this term? Because now I gather some experience, war experience, fighting experience for my work, and I stuck up with these things. There are two different ways. One of guys says, well, if it write it like that into the some manuals, some instructions, you must follow up. And another saying, shut up, I was on work, and you must do like me because I'm survive with these movements, with these thoughts, with these rules. So I want to ask you about your experience in different ways, in different in life at all. So I want to discuss about that. How do you think? What the balance, or what is the main, the one thing or another?
That's a good question. Sean, you want to jump on that right away?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, really, I think to open it up to a much broader subject material, this can apply to anything. It doesn't matter whether we're making paper airplanes, throwing frisbees, or loading magazines. None of that matters. The subject doesn't matter. The discussion, as I see it, is the difference between experience versus theory. And it's kind of funny. I mean, I think this isn't a chicken before the egg moment. I think that theory has to come before experience. So if I was going to rewrite that, it would state theory versus experience, because I think theory should come before experience. And by that, I mean, you should be thoughtful. You should be considerate. You should be considering what comes first, and theory comes before experience. Now, Why do I say that? Well, before Miyamoto Musashi drew a sword out of a scabbard, he probably thought about what he was doing, why he was doing, where it might take him. He was probably thinking before that first draw. But look where he ended up through experience. He's a guy that we still talk about today.
Mhm.
So the theoretical model, looking at Dre as the example, could be first time he ever held a handgun. Before he held it, he probably wondered what it must feel like to hold a handgun. Where does my finger go? I mean, I've seen where the finger's supposed to go in movies, but how does it feel? And so
Yeah.
the theoretical model should occur before the experiential model. But it doesn't always work out that way. Looking at Yuri as the example, in Ukraine, a lot of people weren't thinking about theory before someone grabbed them by the jacket, pulled them into the street, and said, "Here's an AK. We're heading that way. Let's go." So there's not much theory involved there. It's immediately straight to experience. But I would hope that before that person gets grabbed, hands an AK, and says, "Let's go this way," that someone a day before started thinking about the theoretical model of how to the day after grab someone and say, "Follow me." So I think that it's an important distinction that theory should come before experience, but the gap between theory and experience shouldn't be so tight that the person who's thinking about the theory doesn't take enough time to properly consider how to then start grabbing someone with experience. Does that make sense?
I like that. Dre, got any thoughts?
Yeah. So there was discussion back like last year or a year and a half ago. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Tim Kennedy, but he basically put it out there that guys, civilians who've never served in the army, who've never, got the training or anything like that, shouldn't put on body armor, shouldn't, be doing all these tactical training scenarios when really they're just LARPing. And I mean, this created a lot of division within the firearms community. Guys were saying like, "Oh, how dare you say that? Not everybody can go serve their country. While it's very honorable, like, I mean, it's again, not everybody can serve their country. Everybody's doing their own thing, however they can to survive. So, but getting the training from those who have served, or even just getting experience from those who have served, it really puts you in a better position because of the fact that uh, number one, it's you're getting that training that you probably wouldn't have gotten if unless you were able to go serve. But then you as a civilian are just getting better experience at shooting. Like what Shaun said, when I before I first picked up a real gun, I started off with airsoft. So this is a airsoft gun that I've picked up and I've trained with. But even back in the Philippines, like airsoft is a huge thing. And what a lot of guys would be doing in the Philippines when they aren't training in the military is that they would actually do airsoft. And so one of the things that what airsoft was doing was they were practicing close quarter combat engagements, and they were quickly realizing, oh, if I do all these certain maneuvers, it could actually get me killed in certain situations if you're not clearing a door or clearing an area properly. So it quickly got the people who were in the military, who actually got the real training, it got them really thinking, okay, I really need to kind of buckle down and focus more on, like, for this close quarter combat scenarios, like this is what could potentially happen if I was aggressive like this. So um yeah, having like what Shaun was saying is that balance of theory and experience, it's like there's a reason why we go through theory first. It's because majority of the guys that go through the theory have thought about, like you said, all the different scenarios, and then of course they put it into practical application, but in a training scenario, right before they actually go and do the real thing. And it's kind of funny because uh, some of the military guys actually get training from sport shooters. So if you look at IPSC shooters as an example, they're a primary example. They shoot hundreds of thousands of rounds per year, and that's all that they do. Is that they're really well known for their shooting and their accuracy. guys like JJ Rakaza, who I admire so much, not just because he's Filipino, but just the fact that he actually trains. He shoots professionally, but he also trains tier 1 operators, Delta Force, you name it. Everybody goes to his class, his pistol class, because he's such an amazing shooter. And so just knowing those things, I don't take it to heart. Like myself, could I have possibly served when I was younger? Yes, absolutely. But circumstances prevented me from doing that. So now what do? Is I train with local law enforcement, with former military, and a lot of them are more than happy to go share those experiences and share that knowledge with civilians, because after the events of 2020, like they thought that more people should actually know these types of things in case should anything ever happen, they're well prepared.
Well, yeah. Good to have the experience, right?
I'd just like to throw this out because I feel like maybe either I didn't clear it up or maybe Dre, you didn't clear it up, or someone didn't clear it up. But there's an important distinction here between theory and experience. I said that theory should come before experience and that yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. You don't have to go to war to have either of those.
Yeah.
And as a civilian, you could be the most experienced person in the room as you stand there with a bunch of guys from 3PPCLI as the example. And so I don't think the distinction between theory and experience is based on whether you went overseas or not. I think the difference is you can theoretically understand how to do something, but never have done it. And so you might have watched 1,000 YouTube videos on how to clear a room, but yet you've never put on your boots yet or stepped into a room yet. So there's the theoretical model of doing something in your mind as the example. There's the theoretical model of doing something in your mind and then kind of walking through a room and visualizing how to do it as a theoretical model. And then the experience, as I see it, the distinction is then pressure testing the theory. So you may never have to leave your own house to come up with a theoretical model on how to clear your house and then pressure test your theory. That's putting experience, pressure testing, against a theoretical model to determine the outcome and then retweak, which is exactly what can happen in a killing room, which is exactly what can happen in any institution where theory has to be tested by experience. And that experience is just pressure testing. It isn't experience in the sense of I jumped out of 12 planes and each time I had a dagger in my teeth. That is an experience. That's just a cool story, bro. So theory and experience, for you as the example, Dre, you could have the most experience in the room to some degree if we're talking about the pressure tested model against theory. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It there's quite a bit of depth into this, and we see this in the martial arts world a lot, where somebody who has no experience in, say, a particular martial art they'll talk smack, right? Like, that'd never work and blah blah blah, without actual experience in it. And the theory becomes, I don't know how many times I've heard somebody say, especially online, I just get mad, you don't even know my mentality, and like it's silliness. But the theory in their head has become so overwhelming that they don't believe they actually require the experience.
They've realized, or they've turned it into reality. They've realized their theoretical model into, they think that that's how the world turns, but that isn't experience. That's theory.
Yeah. And I think this is, it applies to a lot of things. I mean, even in podcasting, in, combat arts, it's an easy example to be able to say, oh, well, theory versus experience. But I think in the larger scheme of things, I could say that I know 8 chords on my guitar, so I should be able to write a song because I know 8 chords, right? That's my theory based off of the fact that most songs only use 4. The fact that I know 8 should allow me to do whatever, right? But until you actually have the experience,
Congratulations, Geddy Lee.
exactly. So until you have the experience of like actually holding the guitar, actually plucking on the strings, actually holding those, or building up the calluses on your fingertips, right? Like these are things that you need to build over time, in so much as you build your experience. Because I don't think it's so much a theory versus experience type of question. I think it is a how much theory before experience. Because as you said earlier, you have to have some and then get your experience and then go back to theory and say, okay, well, where did this go wrong, or where did it go right? How can I build upon that? And then go back to the experience and then go back. And it's this constant back and forth is how you grow your experience.
Well, hang on a sec. It's how you may grow. Because if you want to be a monk and you want to go out to the cave and you want to develop your theory, and then you step out of your cave and then you swing your bamboo staff around for about a year and you think, looks like I've got it all figured out.
Got this.
Now I'm off to the village to go sort things out. Well, guess what? First time you step into the village, someone hits you upside the head with a frying pan. How'd your theory work out? How'd that experience play out? So the idea being, you can come up with all the theoretical models that you want and then go pressure test all of your theories for as long as you want. But that ain't pressure testing. That's just pressure testing you with your own bizarre ideas, maybe, about how frying pans don't work. Well, you got to pressure test in the world, not just in your tiny little world, in the big world all around you.
Yuri, you got a point?
Yeah. But as always, from another side of the medal, when you even read about, for example, about Miyamoto Musashi or about almost any cool martial arts creators, they need to go to the cave to develop new doctrine. Because if you see, when people fight real fight, they don't have money, or they don't have time, they don't have ability to create a new theory. So it's a very interesting thing. Yes, if you don't communicate with real world, you can't do the real new theory, some new theory. But you also need some stopped in some time, because I now wrote some materials about education of military education, and I wrote some article, and then I forgot this one, I read this one, I talk with some soldier or some officer, and he say something new, and it's unstoppable circle, and I can finish even one thought, even one article.
I think there's also the issue of, where does theory become doctrine, right? And when it becomes dogmatic, or when people aren't open to others' experiences. I was listening to a podcast talking about the officers and leadership of World War One, and the fact that even though there was experience, even though there was thousands of people on the ground with all kinds of experience, they weren't open to the new theory, or they weren't open to interpreting that new experience.
And so why was that?
A lot of it was ego. A lot of it was, and I'm going off of the theory, off of what the podcast was.
Education.
Education was part of it, but
it was culture.
The culture, yeah, there was another.
I mean, World War One, you weren't taught to think. You weren't taught to be an independent thinker. You weren't taught to be an individual. You weren't taught to think for yourself, act for yourself. You weren't. I mean, we just come out of the Stone Ages, generally speaking. I mean, I'm not too far off with that comment in respect to contextualizing it against where we're at right now.
Yeah.
As individuals, educated, independent thinking, independent moving. Way different now than 100 years ago. And so World War I was a completely different human to some degree. You know?
True. But my thought was the fact that, sorry, I'll get to you in a second here, Yuri, was the experience that was being laid out on the ground was being dismissed based off of the fact that the theory had become so dogmatic. Like there was such a level of culture, you can call it whatever you want, but they were so adherent to the rule, to the letter, to the theory, to what had been written by so on and so many, so forth at the school so many years ago. And I think that kind of ties into what Yuri was saying, is the fact that it's because of, there's a point where your experience can become theoretical over time. I mean, we were talking about this the other day when you called me soft, Shaun, was the fact that, I was in the Army 10 years ago. Great. But that doesn't mean that I'm still a hard dude unless I'm doing.
You weren't even that hard
things.
then.
It wasn't hard then either. So, Yuri, what do you got? What were you gonna say?
Well, I want to say that in really, today we don't know for sure what was in First World War. And for example, between First and Second World War, I think it's my own personal thought, but I think the German army was the best army in the world, because Germans by themselves fight against, I believe, against all others the world. So in this time in army, there was some manuals, but if some officer says, I take this decision because of manual, they immediately canceled to the privates, because manuals was only like a help, but not like a doctrine, one doctrine to how to do things.
Yeah, I could. Well, depending on, again, World War I was as Shaun was saying, was it's different human being, right? There was a lot more just do what you're told.
Right? I think we all would have done what we were told, because we weren't that smart 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not even that smart now. And so when someone tells you to do something, most people do it without much thinking. So 100 years ago, that was 100% the case. And year after year, as everyone stood there in the same muddy holes, everyone just thought that that was the way it is. The theory and the experience were combined into one. That's just reality at that time. And no one was out thinking it, because no one was out thinking it. And so nowadays, that is not the case. People do outthink it. But to some degree, I'm not sure that makes things better or worse. It's just being managed differently nowadays.
Yeah. I also think we suffer from the same. Dre, what are you going to say? What do you got?
No. Finish your thought, and then I'll chime in after.
I was going to say that it is the, we see this online all the time, right? We got influencers and people who are just theoretically thinking that something is going to work, or theoretically X, Y equals Z, whatever. And their experience is only in theory, right? It's only online. It's only in a box. It's in your own house, as you were saying, Shaun. It's in the cave. They don't have any actual experience where, what is it? There's a line that I always loved, was the enemy gets a say. Right? Doesn't matter how good your plan is, the enemy gets a say. So your theory is all well and good, even with all of your experience, but then life happens, right? And you got to be able to adapt your experience or adapt your theories kind of on the fly at the same time. That was my thought. But Trey, what were we going to say?
So I want to know your guys' thoughts on this one, because training. We talk about this. Doesn't matter if you're like with theory and experience, where kind of everything comes in the middle is training. So it doesn't matter if you're practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It doesn't matter if you're practicing tactical training and how to like clear rooms, or even like say if you're trying to become a welder, right? Training, like that training environment, is always with it's a mixture of both theory and experience, and kind of the best of both worlds. Because Shaun, you said it yourself in a previous podcast that like when you were searching for a place to study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or even just martial arts, one of the instructors that you went to, he told you, "Oh, grab my arm this way." It's like, well, I want to go grab your arm that way. Well, it's like, no, 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 but like I'll show you how I do it with this method. So so with that particular instructor, they were kind of closed-minded off to the point where it's just like you're not thinking outside of the box and like other methods or other techniques. So you get where I'm going with this one, Shaun?
That's a great example.
Yeah. So with what I find with training and what I find so fascinating is those who train, they're the people who find the middle ground and consistently seek out training, consistently seek out knowledge, because of the fact that they're trying to apply a theory in a practical environment. And again, doesn't matter if it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or tactical shooting. And that's what I love about training, and how I find that the people who train the most have the better experience, because in theory they're testing everything out, finding what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, just because uh, this theory works for most people doesn't mean they'll necessarily work for others. Like I'm a small dude, I'm 5'8", and uh, techniques that would only work for a guy who's probably twice my size and twice my weight wouldn't necessarily work for myself. So I would have to find a technique or a theory that does work for me, and that's where the experience and the training comes into play. And yeah, again, what are your guys' thoughts? Where does training kind of fall in line? Is it still leaning more towards a theory, or is it more on the experience side?
I do have an answer. I was thinking about it before you came up with this. So good man for coming up with this theoretical question. So how I was thinking of it was theory and experience is like the training cell versus the knuckle draggers, or the nerds versus the operators, or the scientists versus the ass kickers. So hear me out. Let's talk about tier 1 as an example. There is a training cell, or an R&D cell, we'll call it. And that cell is responsible for pushing the envelope, moving the needle ahead, forward. And that can be done at the operator level, of course. And now I'm going to take that and I'm going to overlay it with BJJ. So again, you've got the R&D cell, or the theoretical cell, and that's called the black belt, walking around on the mat. And then you've got the operator, or the experiential part of this equation, and that is the partners rolling with each other. Now I'm going to insert you into both of those scenarios, Dre. You're now a guy who's on the BJJ mats fighting with your partner, and you're now a guy who's in a stack about to go through a door in a CQB. And you're the experience part. You're the part that is supposed to be experienced or supposed to be gaining experience. The BJJ black belt, or the directing staff up on the catwalk looking down at you before you stack in, that's the theoretical part. That's the part that is observing. Now, as an operator, or you as a BJJ roller trying to gain experience, you're only gaining it through your set of eyes in a just in front of your nose method. Whereas the theoretical team, the R&D cell, or your BJJ instructor, they're removed from the problem. they are stepped back and getting more of a satellite view, either on the catwalk or walking around on the mats. And what they get to do is equally as important as the observations that you make. They make them here, 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 and here. Or from the catwalk, they make it there, 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 and there. And they're forming a trend. They're observing over a timeline commonalities, creating a trend that they can then drive into doctrine, or they can now adjust your experience into more experience based on their theoretical observations. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
So now your job, as an example, is to become experienced. Their job is to make you more experienced. They're not two different things. They're just two different jobs. Can they both be done at the same time? For sure. If you're like a mega operator, or if you're a mega BJJ superstar, you can do both of those things simultaneously. But on day one and on day 1,000, they're two different jobs. Maybe on day 10,000, they're the same job. Maybe on day 10,000, as you draw your sword out, you're called Miyamoto Masashi. But the first day that you're drawing your sword out, you're still trying to figure out what's the difference between theory and experience.
You know, there's a great point here that I think I don't know if I'm going to do this, but I think I might have to correct Shaun on this. Oh my goodness!
Please do.
No, I know, right?
Oh, let's go.
It's not a big deal.
It's not actually.
That's why I'm here.
Not actually a correction, but I think there's a piece there that needs to be stated, is that in order to be able to actually be in that theoretical position, in order for you to be able to step back and look at something and then be able to make theoretical adjustments, you have to have a depth of experience in that thing to begin with.
Chance Burles, look at you go, you crafty devil. Except when you're forming up a tier 1 team for the first time and no one's been in the R&D cell ever, that didn't exist.
But
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Yuri.
Listen, buddy, as I was as I was making my case, as I was proposing that, there wasn't a second of it that I wasn't thinking of the time that I was sitting there in my black outfit in the R&D team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you had years of experience of infantry training and airborne and stuff in order to be able to pull on. But so I just wanted to be like, it's all well and good. It's all well and good to say, hey, you know what, I'm detached and I'm able to theoretically look at something and look at this operator. That day we did CQB on here, and we were, running through the videos, and you were saying stuff, and I was like, I'm just not even, I don't have the experience to be able to really make any sort of calls on this. So you do need the depth of experience in order to be able to sit in that theoretical cell and work from there.
Yeah, you know what I think more importantly is you need the depth of experience to be able to understand whether you even have any or not.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Yuri, you had a point?
Yep. So I totally agree with you that teacher must have some experience, but there is a problem, a big problem, because, for example, you take the BJJ black belt to teach the tier 1 operators to fight, but are this BJJ black belt have real experience into the fight? Definitely no. He could teach some techniques. So above to these guys, the teacher and the students, must be someone who really have experience or have so much knowledge about things that he can choose the real things for not only for sport but for real life situations. And there is a very big problem, for example, for our army now, because we have guys, for example, who shoot very quickly, who can change magazines into even faster than 1 second. But when I came to my students, and I see that it's aged men who didn't even have zero experience with weapon, and I know that months later he go to the trenches to fight. I can't teach him in this way, in this proper way, like a good sportsman shooters, you know. And there is a very big experience, very big problem. But I want to ask you, first of all, you, Shaun, and you, Chance, about the thing. You, when you were military, did you meet anyone who told you his real experience or experience, and say, well, everything what I study in my education, in my military education, was wrong, and I do in this way and won the fight? Do you have these examples in your career?
Me, no.
No. Let me just see if I'm getting this right. So, somewhat, you're asking if I've experienced someone telling me that everything that they learned in the Army was not correct and they've done it a different way. I actually have had somebody do that, and what they were trying to teach us was wrong. Like, just straight wrong. And a lot of it just comes from actually what we're talking about is the fact that they theoretically have an idea in their head. And so here's a very basic
But
one.
not pressure tested.
Not pressure tested, exactly. Or pressure tested in a singular environment. So it's
Just
not an actual
fully
environment.
pressure tested.
Exactly. So basically, this is one of the first examples I have was we were walking into a building. We were told to clear our weapons, as we normally do. And he was watching everybody, the drill, right? You cant your weapon off to the right. You rack it twice. Well, you rack it once, you look at the ground, see if any rounds came out, and then you rack it again to make sure it's clear. And then you look down the chamber to make sure there's nothing in there. We were all doing that. We got about halfway through, and one of the instructors came up and said, no, you don't have to do that. You just rack it once, you look, and you're good to go, and you walk inside. And I was like, no, that's not okay. But in his mind, because he was at a training cell, he was trying to say, hey, we already know these weapons are clear. You've already, like, there's no magazines in them. There haven't been any da. I know, yeah. There was lots of points in there that were wrong. But in his mind, the theory was sound, right? Because no rounds had ever been in these weapons, and therefore, why would you need to do it twice? But that was his theory, and it was wrong. So, Yuri, what do you want to say?
Yeah. I told you the story because in our army, we with checking, we do just one cycle of the bolt, and then you can push the trigger pointed into the I would say undangerous place.
Yeah, safe direction. Yeah,
the most safe place. But when I was teaching, guy who teach us, he say you must rack the bolt at least twice, because if you tired, if you get cold, you in real war, you forgot about your weapon and you don't really check in all procedure. And when you do this twice, you must rotate your weapon that case came into your partner.
Yeah.
And when you do racking and your partner say, well, something get me, maybe you don't rack out your magazine. Yeah, so maybe if you in a normal situation, you are good, you are in a controlled place, maybe you could do even one rack. But what is rule? Rule is like a red light into the street. I don't know how it's named. When you rode and see the red light, you must stop. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And if it's a rule, you must stop every time, not when you want or don't want. The rule when you do it in every situation. So yeah, it's a very good example of theory which not provide to the real life situation. I totally agree.
Here's what I thought when you were telling that story, Chance, is I hope the next thing you said to him was, that ain't the standard.
That's exactly what I said.
That's right. And that should have been the end of the conversation.
Yeah. I said, that is not the drill, is actually what I said. And then I did it correctly and I walked past him. I was just like, no, I'm not letting that fly. It was painful.
Let me throw this at you. The theory and experience, what we have been kind of talking about to some degree is this. You've got your nerds, you've got your knuckle draggers, you've got the theoretical crew, you've got the experience crew. Somewhere in the middle is the bridge between the white lab coats and the guys wearing black Kevlar gloves. And that bridge is called someone who has played in theory and someone who has played in experience, but is respected enough that they can bridge between the nerds and the knuckle draggers. Otherwise, the nerds will look down their noses at the knuckle draggers, and the knuckle draggers will just curse out the nerds, and the two will never talk in a closed-minded organization. And so you've got to put a bridge between the two of someone who can think and move and talk, not just think and move. And so that bridge part is really important between theory and experience, as I see it. And that's not just the military, of course. It's actually more important, as I see it, within the civilian world or within the non-military community, as it were. I look at airsoft with Dre as the example. I mean, I see that crew as like mega nerds.
Yeah.
With some experience. And so I remember the first time I ever did any airsoft. I just finished all of selection. I'd just been badged. I was just going back to my unit, which was 3 PPCLI for 2 days, where I had to pack all my gear and then go straight out to Ottawa again. See you later, regular Army. So while I was out there, my buddies were like, "What? You're going so soon? But we got to celebrate. What are you doing? Where are you going? But whatever, man, let's go do something." And so they hooked up a airsoft day. And I mean, like, I was a different kind of beast at that point. And so there was a big civilian bus getting off, all these civilians getting off their big old bus with all of their Gucci gear. And then there was a bunch of 3PP guys and me getting off of out of all of our trucks and whatnot. And we looked like the clown show. I mean, we had like a gypsy caravan, parts hanging off all over us, whereas the civilians looked like a Ferrari race team,
Yeah.
But man, I tore through that crew like they didn't even know what was going on. It was like a one-man invasion party. I just basically turned them inside out. And that's experience, man. That's experience versus nerdery to some degree. But I'll tell you what, in hindsight, if I could go back and sit down with that crew of civilians, I would have liked to have been able to learn from them, from their mega nerds, because I would have learned things from them. Their understanding of strategy may have been more refined than mine. It doesn't matter that they couldn't tie their own shoelaces. Their mom had to before they left the house. Come on, Dre. She ties your shoelaces, right? I mean, the nerds, no, not true. The nerds versus the knuckle draggers is a eternal, not battle, but a eternal competition to some degree. But it's creating the bridge between the two very disparate groups at times that can really kind of make the whole thing work.
I couldn't agree more. I was just going to look up a quote, but you didn't continue talking long enough. But yeah, I can't remember what it is. It's the
look it up.
No, it's the concept of the fact that if your fighting is done by imbeciles, then or I can't remember the quote. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The thing is, the point that I was going to make was we see this in life. You look at academia, right? It is highly theoretical. You look at the military, it is highly experiential. And there is a gap between those that can look insurmountable. right? And we see this online all the time. Yeah, Yuri, what's up?
I think that the bridge between in army between people who have experience and theoretical, in which way we could shift our theoretical parts is standards. If we want really change something in military education, we must change the standards. For example, we have now almost all our guys now, military guys, have now tourniquets. But before that, we have not just some sort of just I don't know how it's to say, but from Guma, some it doesn't matter. Why? The question: in which time we must put on our tourniquets on our, for example, leg?
Okay.
And we have there some thoughts. Okay, in 18, in 20 seconds, in 40 seconds, or in which time was the standard? And after that, we understand. And then if we have some heavily wounded, for example, the leg, the man died after 45 seconds of bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
So we must say that's the last line, 45 seconds. And before that, for example, 99 of my students could stretch out and put on the leg his tourniquet about, for example, 40 seconds. Okay, 40 seconds, it's the B qualification, 4 with 5 points. We stand in 4. You understand what I say, or how about you? And the another, for example, is shooting. Yeah, we teaching people how to shoot. They they ended his course, and in the last day, I think he must to have some challenge, some competitions, and to pass some standards, or it doesn't matter at all.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like being able to compete against each other is the key thing.
Meet the
being
standard.
able to beat the standard, right, and be able to continually bring the standard lower, and so it's better and better and better. Dre?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found in not just training, like whether it be in martial arts or whether it be in, like, say, competition, but like there's a reason why we have standards, and original theory like has standards. And some of them are based off experience. It's because of one, safety, and one, because we know that if you try to not cheat the system, but just try to cheat in general or cut corners, that's where things can go sideways really quickly. And so, like, Chance, for example, the instructor that you were dealing with, he was just like saying, "Oh, just rack the slide once and you're good to go." When you corrected it, and you're just like, "No, that's not the process." And there's a reason why. It's because some guys, they will rack the slide, the mag's still inside, so they're actually chambering around, and then they drop the mag. And what do? If they're not pointing the gun in a safe direction, they test fire. Guess what? That round's going to go off. So there's a reason why we have these protocols. There's a reason why we say drop the mag first, rack the slide multiple times, make sure that, there's no rounds in the chamber, check it, and then clear your rifle, do a dry fire, test fire, make sure it, hammers down. It's because it's safety protocol. When guys, again, try to break that, or try to cheat the system, or just try to speed things up, that's where things go sideways. And then the same thing can be said for when you're practicing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or like I was mentioning earlier with welding, is like there are certain techniques that you cannot cheat on. You need to go take your time on, because again, things can go wrong. And so I think, Yuri, that's where you're trying to go get at, that is like where we need to actually, you know, pull some of these people aside and say, hey, no, that's wrong, because of the fact that, you know, this could happen, like these types of situations. So
there is a point there. Go ahead, Shaun.
There are a couple of things there. First things first, you are right, particularly when it comes to safety protocols.
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. I don't care who's with me, and I don't care what time of day it is, in which year. If it's safety, it's on like Donkey Kong. I never compromise on that. For myself or my men, safety. That's it. That's all. It always has number one priority. So with that out of the way, there's a wild difference between someone who's been in the military or someone who's been an airsoft nerd or someone who's in tier 1. Depending on how long they've been in the game, safety looks different. But safety never gets compromised. So for me, as an example, how I manipulate my weapons, how I do my things might be different than how someone with only 1 year in the military does things. But I'm still doing it safely based on my skill sets, based on what's going on around me. I'm probably more safe than that person who's only been in 1 year, though it may appear that I'm the least safe for whatever reason from an external perspective. So that's an important aspect in respect to experience-based safety. The other piece that's super important on the 1 rack versus 2 racks is, who cares what Chance Burles thinks with his 2 years in the military? What Chance Burles will do is do what Chance Burles is told, because the system works the way it works, so that 8 years from now, when Chance Burles is in a position of authority, Chance Burles will know how to do it properly then, teach it properly then, demonstrate it properly then, so that he is engaging the standard moving forward. The standard is the standard, and it's a standard for the reason that it is the standard until it gets changed by the system, not by a man.
100%. Yuri, you have a thought?
Yeah. And with all these words, when you see the Black Hawk Down movie, and when Delta Force guy says, "There is my safety,"
Yeah,
we can see that it's just another level of understanding what he's doing. But this guy from Delta Force, and if you know how you must, I think it's better you came to, I don't know, in another works, then you pass the selection to Delta. This man really know what he need to. And he break maybe some protocol, but this protocol making for who? From guys who have no experience with weapon manipulations. But
no, go ahead, keep going. Yeah, you're accurate.
But I think that in this way we must have some levels of, for example, gun safety. One rules for example, how do you carry your pistol in army? In regular army, your chamber is free and you put safety on. In special forces, you don't care how you handle your weapon. Yeah. You put the ammo into your chamber of your safety, because it's even less than second between your life and death.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, this is the difference between efficiencies, right? There is the standard, there is the safety standard, and as you get better at it, you are going to create efficiencies based off of what you can do. But the fact the safety is still the standard, that's like 100%. I'm glad we've established that safety is the standard when it comes to firearms. But in life, you will gain efficiencies, right, based off of your experience and your theory. So as you get higher and higher up in BJJ, let's say, I can do all of my maneuvers correctly, but then there's going to be efficiencies that I do because I'm taller than most people, right? So the maneuver itself will be the same. The tactic itself will be the same. The friggin' the way in which we clear a room is going to be the same. But my efficiencies are going to be slightly different than Shaun's because my legs are longer than his are, right? And it's just fine tuning those things over time based off your experience and the theory. So I think that is, I think that's a big thing, that those efficiencies don't negate the standard. They just shift the standard, not shift the standard, they shift your view of it. That sound about right?
Yeah, I think there's truth to that. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about how I loosely described the situation when I went back to 3PP to clear out to go back to the teams, and the big bus of civilians there. No offense, buddy. No offense, Dre. But I will say this, that those boys, as they were getting off the bus, they were the equivalent of black belt gi wearers in their mind. You know, they had show you roll. They had all of the expensive gis on. They were all primed to go kick arse. And I was the equivalent of a scrub in kind of sweatpants, unshaven sort of look. You know what I mean? I didn't belong on the BJJ mats. But as it turned out, I no-gied those boys. You know what I mean?
100%. So we're just about at time. Oh, yeah. What do you got?
By the way, it's very interesting thing. But if you look into the gym, the guy who has a new and for mostly time most expensive gis, it's not the most dangerous guy into the gym.
Yeah, there's no guarantee. That's for sure.
100%. So before we finish this off, I found the quote that I wanted to state. It's from Thucydides. I don't know how to say it. It's Greek, but the quote is, "The society that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools." And I think that's pretty much what we're talking about here between theory and experience, is that it requires both. It requires the use of both, and it requires a bridge between both in order to be able to really truly utilize any skill sets that you have, regardless of what those skill sets are. It doesn't have to be combat sports, doesn't have to be military stuff. It is, you know, if you want to play guitar better, you have to know theory. You have to know the theory of music if you want to play guitar better. But you also have to play the guitar over and over and over and over again. Right? You need.
Well, you got to do something, and here's why: because I ain't a big fan of being called either a coward or a fool.
Right.
So get on with the program.
All right. Well, with the last couple of minutes here, any final thoughts, Yuri? Anything on what we've been going over?
Yep. Thank you. So I very appreciate to take so cool topic with you guys, and I think we all agree that theory without experience are dead, and experience without theory are useless. So thank you for this conversation.
Appreciate the topic, man. It was great. It was a great chat. Dre, any final thoughts?
Yep. Just go out and train. Doesn't matter if you are training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Doesn't matter if you're training tactical shooting or sport shooting, or like I said, welding before. Like, theory is great, but get out there and get some experience by training. Honestly, and
I like it.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I like it. Shaun?
Yep. Don't rely on theory. Don't rely on experience. Rely on both of them.
Exactly. And I'm going to state this one more time for the people in the back who didn't hear it. Okay. The society that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. So Yeah. Just make sure everybody, just make sure you got to do both. And I think we hammered on that point pretty well. As we all learn, as we all grow, as we all build here on the collective. Hope to see you tomorrow. Chimo, everybody.
Chimo.
Chimo.